Branch lines are important on Sodor. There's Edward's branch, which runs from Wellsworth to Brendam Docks. Thomas's branch, which runs from Knapford to Farquhar. And the Little Western, which runs from Tidmouth through the coastal line to Arlesburg. Although the mainline engines often disparage the branch lines, the branch line engines are very proud to have been given their own routes to run on by the Fat Controller. One evening, Thomas came back to the branch line sheds, feeling very pleased with himself. He had run every train to time, and the Fat Controller had congratulated him. "I don't know what the Fat Controller would do without me," he boasted. "Without me, the branch line would shut down." "It's not all about the passengers," interrupted Percy. "There's also the goods work, and anyway, what do you mean without you? We all work hard too." "Puh, not as much as I do," replied Thomas. "I had to work hard at Knapford first, remember? And rescue James from a field to get awarded this branch line." "Oh, Percy's right, Thomas," said Toby. "We all work as hard as you do, and we get compliments from the Fat Controller too." "Yeah, so don't go wasting your puff about how the branch line wouldn't be the same without you." Percy and Toby were just wasting their own puff, of course, because Thomas took no notice. A few days later, the railway began using a new sort of coal. It was dusty and burned with thick black smoke. The Fat Controller was cross, and the engines didn't like it either. "Filthy rubbish," they grumbled. The new coal made more ash, too, and before long all the engines began to have pains in their smoke boxes, and they ran late with their trains. One afternoon, Thomas was feeling hot and bothered. He passed Toby at the junction. "Are you all right, Thomas?" he asked. "Do I look all right?" grumbled Thomas. "Of course I'm not all right. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Thomas puffed back on his way. But the next day, Thomas felt worse. His funnel started to blow thick black smoke and he couldn't make steam properly. "Well, we'd better stop for a rest," said his driver. So Thomas pulled onto a siding. Once they stopped, Thomas broke down completely and couldn't move. "I can't breathe," he wheezed. Thomas's fireman began to clear away more ashes, but when he tried to close Thomas's smoke box door, he found out that it didn't make the airtight fit as it should have. "All those hot ashes have bent your smoke box door," he said to Thomas. "Air is coming in so you can't breathe properly through your fire. We'll have to wait for help." The fireman stood out with the guard's red flag to signal for help. Gordon was the first to come by, and when he saw Thomas, he could only laugh. "Out of puff, are you, little Thomas?" he teased. "Ha ha, what a joke!" Thomas couldn't say anything in reply. Then they heard another engine's whistle. The fireman waved the red flag, and coming around the bend was James. "Out of puff, are you, Thomas?" he teased. Thomas said nothing. Thomas's fireman spoke to James's driver. "Thomas has broken down," he said. "We need help back to the station. Can you take the passengers?" "Of course," replied James's driver. James coupled up behind Clarabelle, and then took Thomas's train on. "Help will be on the way," James called. Thomas was relieved. Henry was on his way to collect Thomas. "Poor old Thomas," he chuckled. It wasn't long before Henry arrived, and he took Thomas back to the yard. When they got there, the driver and fireman found a bucket and filled it with water. Then, using a workman's newspaper, they tore it up into strips and soaked the paper in the water. Thomas looked on anxiously, wondering what they were doing. "We're making something called paper mache," explained the driver. "When this paper is soggy enough, we shall place it in your air leak, so you can breathe better. It won't last forever, but it will get us home." Thomas looked very unhappy indeed. He wondered what Toby and Percy would say. But his driver was right. Once the job was done, Thomas felt much better. He puffed slowly and carefully home. His driver and fireman were pleased about how well he steamed. "We'll have to get the fat controller to make it permanent," they joked. Thomas got home without any mishap, but his story was there before him. And instead of sensible things like playing ghosts, now and then Percy and Toby made some sort of breathless puffing noises. "Out of puff, are you?" they joked. "Don't say we didn't warn you." Thomas didn't reply. He thought they had a very odd sense of humor, and were being very silly engines indeed.